We'll be joined by Belly Up's Kevin Wilson to talk about the NBA draft. That's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast.
From Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network, you're listening to the Sports Stove podcast with your host, Vince Stover.
Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up in me?
Welcome into an all-new edition of the Sports Stove podcast. Today, we are presented by In the Clutch. In the Clutch is a officially licensed apparel company with Major League Baseball, MLB, PA, NBA, NFL, retro t-shirts, all kinds of great t-shirts for you. Go to intheclutch.com and use the code SPORTSSTOVE. You'll get 10% off your purchase. And we're also presented by Elementor. Get Elementor, the ultimate WordPress website builder. With live drag and drop editor, you can build and customize every part of your website with zero coding required. Elementor is your all-inclusive solution for your website. Create, manage, and host your website through Elementor. Use the exclusive Sports Stove link in the episode notes on YouTube or whatever podcast platform you're listening to get more information about how Elementor can improve your website today. We are inching ever so closely to the NBA draft. And so I decided that for this episode, we would spend all of our time talking NBA draft heading into the draft on Thursday evening. And joining us is our good friend, the one and only Kevin Wilson. He's the all-around fantasy guru at Belly Up Fantasy Sports. And, of course, me and Kevin talk a lot of baseball throughout the year. And we've had him on the show several times about that. Talk fantasy football as well. But we're here to talk real-life basketball. But, Kevin, welcome back to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Vince. It's always a pleasure to be here. And thank you for having me on the show. And if you have you're talking about In the Clutch, if you got more than one person that you need to buy for, you can also use Belly Up Fantasy to get another 10% off.
Kevin's hijacking my In the Clutch customers.
That's right. Got to do it.
Dad would have joined us, but he's still in mourning over his Boston Celtics being eliminated. Always appreciate Dad being on with us. The NBA is not something he follows heavily, so we decided to set this one out. But Kevin, we got you on now. Again, you head up a lot of the fantasy stuff at Belly Up Sports. You are heavily involved in the as you host the Belly Up Fantasy Live Baseball show on Sunday evenings. You are involved in the fantasy football programming as well. You write articles for baseball, football, and basketball fantasy stuff as well. What is your love of basketball? Where did it come from? Where did it start? What's your kind of your main time frame, I guess? Like for me, it's the Kevin Johnson, Dan Marley, Charles Barkley sons is kind of what got me into basketball. So what was kind of your intro into basketball, I guess?
Well, my intro into basketball was pretty much during the Lakers Showtime and back when they had of course Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and and the battles that they had with the Celtics going on right there. And then they had the rise of the Utah Jazz, and seeing as how I was born in Utah, and so it's like almost legislation that if you're from Utah, you must like the Jazz. And so, despite the fact that they leave me with pretty much a broken spirit after every season, coming back all the way from like 1995 when they were losing to Parker's Houston Rockets, and they couldn't get to the NBA Finals, and they would have won both those years if they'd gotten there. And then they went up against the Bulls and Michael Jordan, and of course that didn't work out so well. And then, it's been pretty much a free fall ever since. And I keep saying that the Jazz are dead to me, but then I turn right around and come right back into the fold. So, I just like basketball. I really like a great game, which we didn't get in this past NBA Finals because not a single game was within 10 points.
Right.
So, so that was kind of disappointing to me. And I was on a show with Parker right at, before game 3 happened. And that's what I was saying. I want a 103 to 100 game, 1 minute to play. We just didn't get that.
Yeah.
So we just got to hope for better basketball, going forward.
Yeah, more competitive games. It seems like the whole playoffs were kind of that way. There
Yes,
wasn't
they were. Yeah, the Mavericks, because I'm over here in Texas, and they were involved in some games, and that game 7 against Phoenix is one of the mysteries that I've ever come across, where you've got the team with the best record in the NBA, and Dallas just went in there and just blew their doors sideways in every conceivable way, and that was fine with me. If Jazz are not number 1, then Mavericks got to be number 2. So that was fine with me. And then, of course, Golden State pretty much blew their windows sideways. And so there was a lot of basketball that wasn't competitive this year. So hopefully we can do some things with the draft and change that.
Yeah, it's funny. I grew up a Phoenix fan, and then that's through again the KJ, Barkley, Marley years, and then you had the Jason Kidd years, which were awesome. That's when I went to my first NBA game, was Jason Kidd in Phoenix, and then you had the Steve Nash Suns, which were just an absolute blast to watch, and it's a travesty that they never made the finals. And they had that 1 year where it was theirs, and then the cheap shot from the Spurs, and then next thing
That's right. When he got drove out of bounds, wasn't it? And nothing was called. Yeah. Yeah. So that was terrible.
Yeah, but you're talking about close games. I know one of the things that makes memories of basketball so great are those last second shots. Jordan over Elo.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about that. All right? Yeah. We don't need to get into that, because as we talked about with Parker, he pushed off. All right. That's all I'll say about that.
Sure. I'll give you that. But that was exciting, and you don't get those historic moments if the game's not close. You think of even like LeBron's chase down of Iggy several years ago. Tayshaun Prince had a big chase down block too, and you think of Reggie Miller had some big playoff moments.
Absolutely. Madison Square Garden, they don't want to talk about that either. So
if the game's not close, there's just little to remember about it. And I don't know that this year's draft is going to draw us any closer to competitive basketball. I'm not sure. How do you view this draft class? Do you think that overall it's good, or overall it's weak?
Well, there's certainly no LeBron James in this draft. There's no Tim Duncan. There's no Shaq. There's no guy that stands head and shoulders over everybody else. But I do think that there is some length to this draft where you might be drafting 10th or something like that. And so there's quality in depth, I think. And so you might be able to get a quality player 10, 12, maybe later on, unless you're the San Antonio Spurs. And, of course, you're taking Kawhi Leonard, what was it, in the second round of the playoff? And he goes ahead and, leads you to the promised land. So you just never know. I think there are some players, there are quite a few players here that can be good professionals. If you're waiting for somebody to ride in to save the day, you might be disappointed.
Yeah, it's true. Kawhi was a first round pick. And the only reason I remember that is because the Pacers drafted him and traded him. Traded him. Back on the trade. But
so maybe it's Parker I'm thinking about, or one of those guys that they always got later on in the draft.
Yeah, Ginobili.
Ginobili, guys like that.
Yeah,
and so San Antonio, maybe because they're 9th in this year's draft, so maybe who knows what they'll pull out of their hat.
Yeah, I agree with you about the class. I think that you're looking at guys that'll be, 5, 6, 7, 8 in the rotation versus 1 or 2 in the rotation for the most part. Maybe the first, 3, 4 picks might be guys that'll be top 2 on the team. But outside of that, I think you're looking at guys that are in the rotation that you can get later in the draft as well. And we'll talk about some of these guys as we go through the draft. Real quick, the order. The top picks. Orlando, of course, leads off. Is this the kind of year? Yeah, I always think of this teams. They're like, all right, we got the first number 1 overall pick, but when you don't have a LeBron James in the draft. I mean, it's still nice to have number one, but you've got to be thinking to yourself, you know, why couldn't we got the one last year or the one next year? You know, why now? It's like the NFL this year.
It's funny with the NBA draft because we talk about Orlando, and of course Orlando picked Shaq, way back in the day, and there is no Shaq here to be found. So, but there are some, like I said, there are some players here that maybe somebody like Mobley from Cleveland last year, that can or Cunningham or one of those guys like that can really help out your basketball team. I think there are some players here that can do that. But since there are so many of these depth players, if you're looking to if you're at the top of the draft, you're looking to trade down, maybe somebody that's later on, you're thinking, well, why do I need to trade up when I get somebody at 10 that might be as good as at 4 or something like that? So it'll be interesting to see if I'm sure there are some guys that might want to trade down, but are they going to find a suitor that's willing to help them out is going to be the question.
All right, so pretty much consensus, everybody has the same 3 players going 1 through 3. Maybe different order slightly, but for the most part, it's the same 3 guys. I've seen every now and then I'll see another guy thrown in there in the top 3. Jaden Ivey, occasionally makes it up there, but pretty much everybody has Chet Holmgren, Jabari Smith, and Paolo Banchero as your top 3 picks. Out of those 3 guys, who do you like the best?
Well, I think that I think the consensus right now is that Jabari Smith is going to be the top selection, and I think that he's going to be a fine player, and Orlando is going to get somebody that if they go ahead and make that pick, that they're getting somebody they're going to like. And the player that I'm really the most interested in this whole draft is Chet Holmgren, because this guy is 7'1". I weigh more than he does, and I'm a foot shorter than he. So, and I was looking at this guy, and over in Gonzaga, he was shooting over 60% from the field because he's one of those guys that he operates around the basket, and that's not what the NBA is looking for anymore. They're looking for guys that can shoot from the outside, and Holmgren is not that. And so it'll be interesting to see who it is that decides to take him, and whoever that is might need to find out what his favorite flavor is and get him some of them protein shakes pronto, because 7'1" and 195 pounds is not going to stand up to the NBA rigors, having guys that are dragging you up and down the court all game. So he's somebody that's really interesting to me, and I'm to see who it is that decides, well, we're going to go ahead and select him. I think that if he weighed a little bit more, he would probably go number 1 overall. But there are some red flags with him that I don't think that Orlando is going to take him.
Okay. Well, he's not unathletic, but he is.
No, he's certainly not. He can block shots and he can operate, like I said, around the basket.
Yeah.
But you got a guy like Rudy Gobert. He's a center, of course. He's a defensive player of the year. And teams, all they wanted to do was get him away from the basket to draw him out. And he wasn't effective out there. So that's a similarity that I'm looking at right there, because you got Dallas and they just made a trade for Christian Wood. And why did they do that? It's because he hits 38% of his 3-point shots. And that's just the way the NBA is going right now.
So you think Jabari Smith is going 1?
I do.
What do you like him? What do you like about him?
Well, he's from Auburn, and so right away that down there in the SEC, he saw quality basketball every night, and that's another thing about Chet and for Gonzaga, and they've run into that problem when they get to the NCAA tournament. They're not playing, who is it, St. Mary's or whoever else that they've got over there in their conference, and it hurts them in that respect, I think. And so, but Smith, he's a power forward. He's a guy that can he can get down there. He can rebound the basketball. There's quite a few things that he can do. And so I think that, given the competition and the position he plays, and Orlando, of course, they need everything. And so a power forward will fit right in well with their team.
Yeah, that's kind of what I look at with Orlando, because I still lean towards Chet, actually. I know there's a lot of noise for Jabari Smith going to Orlando. I'm still leaning towards Holmgren at the moment. Looking at their roster, it's kind of how do the Magic feel about Wendell Carter? He's kind of the main competition there right now. Jonathan Isaac is actually, I think, a relatively similar player to Chet, only probably shoots a little bit better. But tall, a little bit lanky, although again, he's bigger than Chet is. So those are kind of your two main guys you're looking at as far as who's going to challenge for playing time and things like that. I think you could make it work. I'm skeptical of picking bigs early in the draft. I'm a guy that goes all the way back, right? I mean, if you take the center over the guard or the center over the small forward, it usually comes back to bite you, with rare occasions where that's not true. The Shaqs and the Akeems and
like we said, there's no Akeem Olajuwon in this draft.
Right. So I don't know. Again, a lot of noise for Jabari Smith going to Orlando. I don't think Holmgren makes it past 2. Oklahoma City's at number 2. Again, a team that needs literally everything.
And they've got seems like they've got like 27 draft picks.
Right.
And yeah. So they could go ahead and take him, because they're going to have a chance, because let me see here. They've got the 12th pick coming up right after that.
Yep.
So if you take a chance with Holmgren there, and let's say it kind of works out, but not great, you could still get somebody at 12 that can help your team and maybe balance that out just a little bit.
Yeah, I like the fit for Chet Holmgren in Oklahoma City a lot better than I like it in Orlando. Because you're looking at guys that he'd be playing with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Josh Giddey is there. I'm forgetting somebody, of course, Lou Dort, that everybody loves. There's somebody else, Isaiah Roby, as a guy they like there. He's 6'8", so power forward. The only center, you're looking at Mike Muscala. You're looking at somebody else I'm forgetting on that team, and I can't find it now. Derek Favors is there. So I think Chet fits OKC with what they have and what they can do. I think it makes sense for him to go there more so than Orlando. But I think Chet's going to turn into an interesting player in the NBA. I'm not sure.
I root for him. I hope that he does well.
Yeah,
he's a very likable guy. Comes from a great program, and so you hope that he's successful, and doesn't turn out to be Sean Bradley or anything like that. You wouldn't wish that on your worst enemy, I don't think.
Well,
so you hope that he
was in the NBA for a while,
and he was in there because he was 7'6" or whatever it was.
Yeah,
and but he weighed like 204 pounds or something crazy like that too. But so you hope that it works out for him wherever he winds up. I think in Oklahoma City that would be a good place for him. And, because when you look at Oklahoma City, you talk about fantasy, but there are a lot of players on Oklahoma City that fits fantasy better than they actually do in real life basketball. So,
yeah,
if that works out and you happen to get him on your fantasy team, well, okay.
Yeah, SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I'm a huge fan of his from when he was here in Lexington and at Kentucky, and going forward. He's a phenomenal basketball player, great size, length, ability. Everything's there for him. So I don't think they're too far from being a decent team. Maybe not a championship team, but a decent team, because they've got some real talented guys there. I just think they need to use their draft picks to trade and actually add some pieces.
Yeah, because they've definitely got the draft capital to do some things starting in this draft. If there's a team that can move up, it's got to be Oklahoma City.
Oh, yeah.
After they make their second pick, they can move up, if somebody's willing to do that, because they've got the draft capital to make it happen.
What about going out and getting a guy? I don't know that he would come or that he would be what they want to be, but guys like Bradley Beal, that's available right now.
I actually heard his name mentioned, Bradley Beal, and Oklahoma City, strangely enough. So if that's something that I don't know why he'd want to do that, because first of all, he'd have to take a massive downgrade in pay to make that happen. And so I think that would work. Bradley Beal is a player. He's not one of those guys, he's not a number one on your team. He could be a 1A, or, you got 1A and 1B. He could be 1B. And I don't know if he actually wants to be a 1A player on a team. He's more comfortable with somebody else taking the spotlight. So maybe that being the case, maybe Oklahoma City wouldn't work out, because who's the 1A? Maybe, like you're saying, Shea over there. But if they could get him, they could really make some noise.
Yeah, I think so too. So I think Holmgren and Smith 1, 2 in whatever order. Smith 1.
I think that those two guys are at the top of the draft. I don't think there's any real question about that.
So that leads us to pick number 3, and Houston Rockets on the board at pick number 3. Pretty much everyone has them taking Paolo Banchero from Duke. Power forward athlete, can play really, really good basketball. 6'10", 250. But
see, that's the 250. That's what you like out of him.
Yeah. But he plays well. He's 20 points, 10 rebounds for the most part. So, I mean, there's a lot there to like. And I know the kind of knock on him that I've heard is slow feet, and which can be a problem defensively, especially in the NBA. But he seems pretty well locked in as the number 3 pick. There's, again, some people that say Jaden Ivey from Purdue would jump in at that spot, but it seems like Banchero is kind of that number 3 guy in this draft.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I like Ivy, but I don't think that, like I said, the Rockets just traded, Wood, and seems like they got 45 guys back from Dallas for him. So they need something up front. And so I think that that Paulo going there makes all the sense in the world. The only thing that might give you a little pause is sometimes these players from Duke, they are great college basketball players, but it doesn't always translate over to the NBA. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but it's something that you got to be aware of and see how things go with him there. Yeah,
I mean, obviously there have been plenty of good ones too, right?
Absolutely, there's been plenty.
Tatum,
7,000 guys from Duke could be a first-round draft pick, and so, but you Christian Laettner, and you can go from guys from there.
Yeah. I can hear the Duke fans
pan out as well in the NBA. I'm not sure why exactly that is, but I don't really see that as a problem with Banchero. I think that he could go, and if he does go to Houston, he could make that team his own down there, because they've got, like I said, they've got all these guys from Dallas that they just traded for, so they've got a lot of mini me's going on down there. But
and they continue to get young. There's talk today about Eric Gordon getting moved at some point here soon as well. But you got guys, Jalen Green, who was drafted last year, Kevin Porter, who's been good, Tate, who's been good as well. And then, like you said, the guys that they've traded for, they're going to lose still. It looks like a few people. Sengun is a guy that a lot of people like as well. And so I think those top 3 are pretty well set. Again, somebody might like Ivy and jump up and get them, but I think that we're sitting at those top 3 pretty well. But the draft kind of starts to get interesting then at number 4.
Absolutely, it does.
Sacramento up at number 4. They have an interesting
yeah, they do. They absolutely do. Because let's say the 3 goes that we're just talking about, and then you got Ivy sitting right there, but they don't need a guard. They don't. So does it go back to needs over best player available, or do you just take the best player available and live with that? Because if they do that, then Ivy's the pick, obviously, there to me. And If they decide not to do that because they really don't have a need for him, then you've got him, one of those players that maybe start sliding down the board a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you've got guys, let's say a guy that I like is Jeremy, and I'm going to try and pronounce this as best I can, Soshan.
Yes.
Out of Baylor. He's a power forward. He's a guy that they could use over there if they decide to go over needs, over, best player available.
Mm-hmm.
So Sacramento is going to turn this draft one way or the other, depending on, if everything works out and the three guys are off the board that we expect to be off the board. What Sacramento does is going to set the tone for this draft after that.
Yeah, of course, you got Fox, who I love, but it seems like not everybody loves him. Davion Mitchell, another young guard there. Of course, they traded Halliburton last year for Sabonis, moving to Indiana.
And I like Sabonis. Yay.
Yeah. Yeah, Sabonis is really, really good.
He was on my fantasy team, so yay, Sabonis. Except for when he was hurt, then it wasn't quite so great.
So much. Yeah. Ivy is, I think, the best player available at 4.
I do too.
Best case scenario for Sacramento, though, is Ivy getting taken in the top 3.
Yes, and that takes all the pressure off them. Absolutely does.
Yeah, you get one of those bigger guys to fall to, and whether it be Smith, Monchero, or Chet Holmgren, would all be good fits there, I think, in Sacramento and be good. I've seen some people say Keegan Murray from Iowa. Again,
he's a guy I got right here. It just depends on what power forward you like, because I like him too. Those Iowa boys, they got all the corn and stuff that they go, eat down there or up there. And so, so that would fit in really well with Sacramento as well, if you decide to do him.
Sacramento seems to be a great spot to trade down. Again,
you
have a guy like
somebody that wants, if Ivy's sitting there, and they're really not, come on, we don't need him. They might get somebody to trade up.
Yeah, I mean, you got teams like Indiana that's a couple picks down from them.
Indiana's at number 6.
Portland at 7.
Portland at 7.
Could possibly move up as well. So there's possibilities there, I think, for them to make a move down if they choose to do so. One of the things I hate about the NBA draft is you don't know who's picking. They make all these weird trades and they don't announce. It's just, I hate it. I absolutely hate the NBA draft. But that being said, Ivy's the best player at 4 probably, but we have no idea what Sacramento's going to do. They've got Mike Brown, former Cleveland Cavaliers head coach there now. So new staff. Maybe they can stabilize some things out there. I think they have some good talent on the team currently. But they definitely need to make some moves. And they got some guys that they could move to that are currently on their roster. Maybe pick up some more draft picks here this year too. Harrison Barnes is kind of comes to top of mind on that as well there for Sacramento. So after the 4th player off the board, again, I think things kind of level out a little bit. Detroit up at number 5. They had a great draft last year getting Cade Cunningham, and he looks like he's going to be a legit player for a long time. So what do you think Detroit needs to do to partner with what they have going right now?
Well, a player that I really kind of like is a guy that you got guys that went to college, and you got this guy, Dyson Daniels, who played in the G League last year. And so he's a player, he's a shooting guard, and he's a guy that I think that could, he had the experience where these other guys played in college, but he was out there against pro players, more or less. And I think that's a guy that could really slide up in there and help Detroit a lot.
Yeah, I hear his name a lot. People like him. I'm a little weary of the G League guys. We haven't seen a lot of it turn out as instant success yet. Not necessarily bad players, but guys that just haven't jumped out as being just great players as soon as they come on and be a part of your team. I think guys like Keegan Murray is interesting here. I start to hear the Shaedon Sharp noise once you get to 6 and 5, 6, somewhere in that range, although I think he's going to go lower than that, maybe down in the 10 to 11 range.
Yeah, I've got him at 10 going to the Washington Wizards.
That'd be an interesting spot for him. Okay, so I'm an anti-Shaden Sharp guy, and the reason why that is, I live in Lexington, Kentucky. Shaden Sharp committed to Kentucky, reclassified, came, and kept telling everybody, no matter what, he's going to be here next year. Not going to play this year, going to be here next year. Well, then time came around. He declares for the draft, which all Kentucky players do, and then some will come back, some will transfer, whatever. And then, but he kept teasing the fan base that, I still might come back. I still might come back. Now, listen, he's told he's going in the lottery, and many people think top 10. I don't blame him for going to the draft. I blame him for not playing at Kentucky this year and just sitting on the bench and going to practice, but not playing, not contributing to the team. And I blame him for teasing the fan base as well. And honestly, I don't know that he has, if I am a team, and again, I didn't do interviews with him, didn't do workouts with him, any of that kind of stuff. But my first mindset goes to his mental game. And when you got guys like Kyrie out here being kind of just wacky.
Yeah, you don't want to be in the same sentence with Kyrie Irving. No.
And I don't know that he is, except for this thought. If he wasn't willing to play this year for fear of his draft stock going down, that means he doesn't have the confidence or the belief that he is actually good enough to be at that spot, at that level. And I would look at it in a negative sense that he didn't play this year. And I don't know. And I've heard he hasn't, his workouts haven't gone great. But again, I'm just hearing, other people talk about that kind of stuff. I have no idea.
Okay, so that's a guy that keep your eyes on, because he could be one of those guys that are sliding way down the board.
Yeah, there's so much risk reward with him. He can't drop too far. Maybe 12, I think, might be the farthest he goes. But he's a guy that you don't know what you're getting. He hasn't played, since high school. I mean, he didn't play at all last year. He's young. He's got decent size. He's got good skill set, but you've never seen him compete against the best of the best. And one of the things when you go to the big schools, Kentucky, Duke, Kansas, North Carolina, you get a chance to see them compete against some really good basketball players. So I would pass on Shaden Sharp, and I would be okay with it, even if he turns out good. I just think the risk is too high, unless you got a team that's got multiple draft picks and they can afford to miss on one. But that's kind of where
that goes back to what we were saying about Oklahoma City, because they've got the 12th pick. And if you go ahead and take Holmgren, then you can't afford to also miss on the 12th pick. So if that's the case and Sharp is still sitting there, then maybe you need to say, well, bye-bye to you, because we can't take a risk and wind up with two guys on your team that might as well, stay in, second rounders or whatever. He tried to protect his draft status. Well, if he's sliding, guess what? It didn't work.
It didn't work. Yeah. Detroit at 5, Indy at 6. Indy's a team, again, they have needs pretty much everywhere. They're basically in a rebuild. Supposedly they're still trying to move Miles Turner. Yeah. They've been trying to move for 3 years now. But they got Halliburton. He's kind of their main piece. Brogdon and Turner are both on the block. If they can move them, they will. So what does Indiana have to get in this draft to stay relevant in the Eastern Conference?
Well, they need to get somebody that they can depend on, because like you're saying, they've got these guys on the draft, or to trade them out and stuff like that. And so let's say they go ahead and do that. They need a guy over there that they can plug into their lineup, that they can have confidence in and not worry about him, because they've got these other players. You never know you make a trade for a guy, you think, okay, he might be great, but you don't know that.
Right.
And so I think that they need to get a guy. And if we're talking about Jeremy Sohan, he went to Baylor, so that means he's got a pretty good head on his shoulders. And so he's an intelligent guy. He can, get over there, power forward. If I'm going to make a mistake high up in the draft, let it be with a power forward that can get out there and do some things and rebound and all those things. And then if I make a mistake with a power forward, then I can live with that. Whereas if I make a mistake with a 7'1" center and it doesn't work, then then I might need to be consoled after the draft at some point. Give me a pat on the shoulder and say it's going to be okay, kind of thing.
I want to skip down to the New York Knicks. They're at number 11 this year. Yep. John Rothstein tweeted, the Knicks have had 4 lottery picks in the past 5 NBA drafts. Frank Ntilikina, Kevin Knox, R.J. Barrett, Obi Toppin. Some of the players they passed on: Donovan Mitchell, Bam Adebayo, John Collins, Mikal Bridges, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Miles Bridges. Sitting at number 11, they're not at the top of the draft, of course.
Right.
11 is a little ways down when you're talking about especially this year's draft. To me, New York, they need to work on getting Donovan Mitchell in the building, trading whatever they got to trade to get him there.
Well, I heard that the Bulls were interested in him, and I just don't see that being a fit. And if you're the Jazz, why in the world would you want to take any of New York's players? I'm serious. Like you just mentioned, all those guys that they passed on, you cannot depend on the brain trust, if you want to call it that, over there in New York. And so if I'm Utah, of course they don't have a coach at present, so I don't know who would take the phone call if they did. Danny Ainge, I guess.
Yeah,
and I don't think Danny Ainge is jumping up and down trying to deal with the New York Knicks.
Yeah,
so. I don't see that as being a realistic possibility.
Yeah, Miami probably makes the most sense because they've got pieces, right? I mean,
they do got pieces down there, and they have a championship, mindset.
Yeah,
they haven't won a championship, in a while, but they've gotten to the finals. They've gotten to the Eastern Conference Finals, and so they've got players that know how to play the game of basketball. So. If you call me up from Miami, I'm going to listen to what you're putting out.
What about a guy, Johnny Davis, Wisconsin player, got injured last year. He's a shooter, had a rough year after his injury, but from everything that I can see, the injury played a big role in his drop-off shooting. He sprained his ankle, couldn't get that lift and things like that. He's a guy that fits today's NBA, a shooter, an athlete, a defender as well. How high does a guy like Johnny Davis go in this draft?
Well, as you mentioned, sprained ankles, as we're going to find out from Manny Machado, because he's got a sprained ankle right now. So if that affects your whole everything else about you, because you're going to land on your ankle, you're going to turn on your feet, you're going to push off and all that sort of thing. And so if he's healthy, which everything that I've seen that he is, he could really move up this draft and shake some things around a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. People get weird about injuries, but I mean, you go back and look at Steph coming into the league, his ankles were horrible, and Steph Curry's turned out okay since then. I would say,
he's been just okay.
Yeah. I like Davis. I like him at 7 to Portland. I like him at 8. I like him in that range, 7, 8, 9, 10. I like him in that area right there. You got New Orleans, San Antonio, and Washington.
That's not that big a jump because I've got him at 13 with the Hornets. And so if he moves, he could move up to that top level and really do some good things for them. Small forwards.
Mm-hmm.
I could use a small forward.
I really like him. If you could get Chet Holmgren and Johnny Davis in OKC at 2
now,
12.
We got something to talk about.
Yeah. I like them pairing up. I think that'd be a fun thing to have. Talk to me about Ty. Again, I'm a Kentucky guy, so I can be a little biased on these guys.
I have to say that when I first was looking at this Ty Washington, that's a cool name. All right. So, and he's a junior on top of it all. So. That's right. You got Dad, Ty running around, and you got Ty Jr. running around. And so point guard, and from what I understand that he is a point guard.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of teams aren't looking for point guards per se. in the NBA. You know, they want him to be Steph Curry and be shooting guard, slant, point guard.
Yep.
And so, but I could use a point guard on my team. And so if he ran the Kentucky offense, then that speaks highly to me. And you can bring him over here, and you're talking about the Knicks. And you know, you wouldn't wish that on your worst enemy, maybe going to the Knicks. But he's a guy over there. Maybe that doesn't work quite, because it seems to me like the New York Knicks have like 7,000 guards on their team.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's not such a great fit over there. And so hopefully the Knicks decide, well, we don't need another guard, and they go a different direction.
Ty needs to go to a team that has a point forward. He can handle the ball and he can distribute the ball, but he'd be better playing with someone who has basically a point forward, someone else that brings the ball up and runs the offense through someone else, but then he can get the ball and do something in the half court and things like that as well. Listen, I'm a Kentucky fan to a degree, but I think Coach Calipari is a horrible basketball coach. He's a great recruiter. He's a great motivational speaker. I think he's a horrible.
You can't argue he's one of those 2 points. That's for sure.
Yeah, his X's and O's though are really bad, and what he's done with the talent that he's had over the last 6-7 years has been really pathetic. And I think he's hurting more guys.
He hasn't won a championship, with all these guys
since AD. Yeah. So, they went another time, and they've been to the Final Four a couple times. But it's just he's had too much talent to have such little results, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's hard to argue that.
Yeah, I can go on. I can talk about Coach Cal for a while, but we'll lay off a little bit on that. Who is a guy that you think is going to be overdrafted, meaning he goes too high? When we look back on it down the road, we'll go, boy, can't believe they took him in the top 5, or can't believe they took him in the top 10. Well, he's ended up out of the league.
Well, hopefully, as I said, we're not talking about Chet Holmgren in that way. And so, there's not a lot of, margin for error with this guy, because, like I said, this is not the NBA of old, and him operating around the basket is not what the NBA. That's not what they do now, and him and his slight frame, there are a lot of question marks with him that make me a little bit nervous, and hopefully we're not talking about him as a guy that, like certain Cleveland Cavalier draft picks that we could mention that went at the top of the draft, and you don't know where he is today. And so we don't want to be talking about him like that. And so he's the guy that really kind of, gives me the heebie-jeebies a little bit, because I don't want him to fail, but I could see that as being a possibility.
See, I don't have any reservations really on Chet. I don't know that I would have to take him number 1, but I think he's going to be around for a while. Now, is he going to be a superstar? Maybe not. So then maybe going number 1 or 2 is an overreach and all that kind of stuff. But I think he's going to be around and be useful. I think at worst, and this is bad, and this would be horrible if this is him, it's Lauri Markkanen. At worst, that's kind of where he ends up, and that would be horrible for him, especially with
Lauri Markkanen. He was not a number 1 draft pick.
Right. But I don't think that's the case. I think Chet's going to have a good career,
and I hope so. Like I said, I hope so. Everything works out, and it's all gumdrops and sun shine over there for him, and. But
I got 2 guys that I think are going to be overdrafted that we'll look back on and think, how did anybody think they were going to be that good? One is Mark Williams, the Duke center, big man.
Go back to Duke. Yep.
You mentioned Duke earlier, and then the other one's Tari Eason from LSU.
That's the guy you need to keep, because he could go anywhere in this draft, and he could wash out big.
Yeah, I'm not big on him, and I think that he's going to get drafted earlier than he should, and someone's going to regret it down the road as well. Now, who's the guy that you think will be underdrafted that we'll look back on in 4 years and go, how did they not get taken in the top 20 of this draft?
Well, let's see if we're going to go outside the top 20. Let's see. How about a guy like EJ Liddell? Is that how we pronounce that? Out of Ohio State.
Yeah.
Okay. Power forward. He's projected to go outside the top 20. And he's a guy that could move up. And we're not going to talk. You just talked about Mark Williams. I have him outside the top 20 anyway. So if that's what winds up happening with him, how about a guy who almost has the same name as Nikola Jokic?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Jokic. All right. There's a guy here, Nikola Jovic. Is that how we're going to do that? Out of Serbia.
Yeah, I don't. Okay. I try to try the foreign guys.
Okay, so if I'm butchering that name, I apologize, but that certainly stood out to me that there's a guy that's running around that almost sounds like he's the Joker.
Yeah,
and so hopefully there are not guys that think that he is going to be that, because he is not. And so, and actually, I've seen that that ironically enough, the Denver Nuggets might be interested in him. So you got, the Joker, and then you got Jovic, or however you pronounce his name, running around on the same team. And so if that's the case, then he's a guy that's definitely going to move up in this draft, and we'll see how that goes.
My guy's Max Christie out of Michigan State. I think he's going to go late first, maybe early second. But I think he's a guy that's going to have a really, really good career. And it might be a result of him getting drafted to a good team that helps him early on, if he goes late first, for instance. But I really think he has the potential to be something special. Johnny Juzang is another guy who's being projected as a second-round pick by most people from UCLA. Again, he's a guy that can shoot lights out. And in today's NBA, maybe he's a 6-man, maybe he's a 7 or 8-man off the bench. But I think he's going to have a career where people are going to look back and go, man, he was really good. I can't believe he went so far down the draft. So Christie and Johnny Juzang are the two guys that I'm looking at in those, and as far as guys that could be something special. What team do you think is going to help themselves the most in this draft?
Well, it better be we talked about Oklahoma City. It better be them. They've got 3 draft picks in this, first round. And so they had better help themselves a lot in this draft. And so if they don't, things could get ugly up there pretty quickly, because they've got nothing but, other than, as you mentioned, Gilgeous-Alexander, they've got a bunch of young guys up there, and they need to have quality players. And if they don't get them, it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, I agree with you. OKC's the team. I'll throw out Charlotte Hornets as well. They got 2 first-round picks, 13 and 15.
They do.
They don't have a coach at the moment.
The Hornets also, remember, or not the Hornets, I'm talking about Houston Rockets.
Yeah.
They're a team that better come out of this with something, because now they've also have the 26th pick of the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah.
Even though, it's kind of funny how the NBA works, where they won't let you trade a first-round pick in consecutive years, but they'll let Dallas pick whomever Houston wants and then trade them.
Yeah.
That's pretty silly to me.
Yeah. Yeah, but, the NBA is weird. Like I said, the NBA draft is weird. I'm always confused. Who's picking? Who's this player actually going to? I don't understand why they don't make it simpler. But Charlotte is a team, again, Mike D'Antoni's in for an interview after Atkinson turned down the job. So they're still trying to finalize who their coach is going to be. They've got some really talented guys on that team.
They do. They absolutely do. They got Ball running around over there, and Gordon, hopefully he can stay healthy up there, and they've got some players.
They do. So I think Charlotte's a team too that could come out really strong after this pick. Is there any one player that you think is getting traded between now and the end of the draft? That'd be a pretty big name.
Well, it'll be interesting, because just yesterday, they're talking about over there in Brooklyn, they're talking about Irving. Mm-hmm. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. Maybe because it's only 2 days from now, maybe they don't make that move. Because first of all, he has to decide: is he opting in? Is he opting out? What is he going to do? And as they said on Pardon the Interruption yesterday, we could speak from now till the end of time on Irving and spend an hour each show talking about him and life in general. And so it'll be interesting to see what's happening with him, and what are they going to do in LA? Because I don't see that being a possibility with him and LeBron getting back together. But the Lakers got to be itching to do something.
Yeah.
Because they've got guys that almost are my age. So that's not a good look on a basketball team. And they're talking about how LeBron James don't even want to be there anymore.
Well, yeah. Why would he? Why would he? I mean, he picked the team like he did everywhere else.
You picked the coach, and you picked the players, and you probably picked whatever the flavor of Gatorade is on the sidelines. So if things don't work, and they haven't ever since they won the title, things have slid off the mountain pretty badly out there. And I know I talked at the top about how the Lakers got me into basketball. Well, the Lakers don't have any interest of mine whatsoever anymore. And so if they're at the bottom of the league, that's fine with me. Yeah. Maybe not a lot of people, but it's fine with me.
I'm with you on that one. Trade-wise, I think Donovan Mitchell's a big one to watch for. Miami's a team to watch out for because, again, they've got pieces they can move. And then Denver is a team, too. I think Denver could move off of somebody for the right pieces in return. Michael Porter Jr. might be a name to watch out.
You just have to be 100% healthy for that to happen.
Yeah, that's true. Very true as well. All right, NBA draft is Thursday evening. We'll be tuning in to see how everything shakes out and discussing it on the next episode of the Sports Stove as well.
And if you tune in on Belly Up TV, you'll be watching me because I will be live Thursday analyzing pick 16 through 20. That's where I'll be.
Okay, I'm out of the loop on that. I apologize. Belly Up TV. Do you know what time that show starts? I guess.
It starts at I believe it's you talk about how you're in the Eastern time zone, and that's where time begins. I believe that's at 8:00 Thursday, 7:00 my time here, because we lag behind you guys on the East Coast and all that. But that's when the show begins at 8, 7, and then I'll come on whenever they get to the 16 through 20, and which, by the way, is I've got that here. 16 through 20 is
Atlanta, Houston, Chicago.
And then Chicago, Minnesota, and then the Spurs.
The Spurs. Wrap it up there.
So, we could talk about Spurs. What are they going to do?
Draft foreign players. That'd be where I put my bet on.
Yep. You could be pretty much sure about that. Let's see, who do I have them taking? I can tell you that right now. They've got this guy that plays basketball for Milwaukee. I didn't even know they had a Milwaukee University. Maybe you know that.
Yeah.
But that's Patrick Baldwin.
Yeah.
That's who I have going to them. So it'll be interesting to see if that is in fact what happened.
Yeah, good player. Good player. I actually almost brought him up earlier. That'd be a good land. Kevin, tell everybody where they can find you at, even though we kind of talked about it earlier.
All right. Well, you can, except for this weekend, you can. I'm on the fantasy Belly Up Fantasy Live Football Dynasty edition that comes out Sunday mornings at 11 over there in where time begins. Sunday morning, and then Vince and I can normally be found on the Belly Up Fantasy Live baseball show that comes on at 8:00 Eastern. And if you go to Belly Up Fantasy website, you will find stories from me. You could just click on my name and there are stories there.
Yeah, you got ad drops, advice.
Ad drops. Just check me out, and you can always follow me at Twitter at Kevin62 WILSEA, and drop me a line. Always happy to hear from people.
Yep, Kevin always likes to interact on Twitter as well.
That's right.
He'll usually cuss you out. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
No, he's a good conversation on Twitter as well. You can find him there. Don't forget, you can find on intheclutch.com all your retro MLB, MLBPA, hockey, basketball, football, whatever you can find. You find it on intheclutch.com. Use code SportsStove, get 10% off your purchase. And then Elementor, if you have a website or you're wanting a website, you got to use Elementor. They'll help you. It's super easy to use, super affordable. They host it, no coding involved. Use the exclusive Sports Stove link. You can find it in the YouTube notes or the podcast notes, wherever you get your podcast as well. Thank you, Kevin, for being back on the program.
Always a pleasure, Vic.
And thank you all for listening. Until next time, we'll see.